All right, welcome everybody to the ShopNotes podcast. I'm your host, Phil Huber. I'm joined today, as always, by the regular core of contributors, Logan Whitmer and John Doyle. Today we're speaking from our own workshops or even the set of the Woodsmith shop. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about live edge fads and what we're working on in our own shops and any updates that we have around the magazine and the TV show. So let's get started.
This episode of the ShopNotes podcast is brought to you by Woodsmith Magazine. Woodsmith Magazine has been the trusted source for all of your woodworking information for over 40 years. From tips and techniques to furniture projects to shop projects, you'll find it all in Woodsmith Magazine. Subscribe today at woodsmith.com.
All right. Logan, this one was on you.
Why is it always on me?
I feel like, hey, you suggested the idea.
Yeah.
I'm giving you credit and blame for it.
I was say. I don't know if that's more
on your shoulders.
Burden.
Yeah. You are the atlas of this episode. I feel like this is...
Yep.
Okay, so live edge furniture in all its many sundry forms, and I will lump in the epoxy river pours in here as well.
Yeah, I almost included that in my text, but I didn't.
So now, is this because you have a bandsaw mill and every time you slab a log, you are essentially making live edged boards?
Kind of, yes. And that's kind of where it stemmed from. So for a number of years, I've been kind of fascinated, and I think everybody goes through this period where they're fascinated by George Nakashima, right?
Sure.
Kind of the godfather, Mr. Miyagi of live edge furniture. What?
Nothing.
I would have gone with the Bee Gees of live edge.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Well, anyway, so George Nakashima obviously was a very well-known furniture maker, built beautiful furniture, right?
Right.
And I actually, before this whole furlough thing or the work from home thing came up, you know, the whole pandemic or whatever, in the office, I found an online auction that was selling some actual George Nakashima furniture from Pennsylvania, which it was like, holy cow, this world-renowned furniture maker who is no longer making furniture. Obviously, he's passed away. His daughter, I believe, Mira, now carries it on. But some of George's furniture was up for auction, and I was very tempted to take out a second mortgage to pay for some of it, but I did not. But yeah, it was the whole topic popped to my head because this last weekend I was sawing at somebody's place, and we were cutting some maple that he had. And it's like, oh, these are like perfect for like coffee table size stuff. And that made me start thinking, you know, yeah, everything I'm sawing for the most part is live edge because I like to live cut it. That way I can just stack it back the European style to dry. You know, I don't have to worry about rain or anything really. And it's nice just to keep that flitch the same. And then you can easily go through and book match stuff. But it made me start thinking about how popular live edge stuff has become, but how it's very, very easily overdone, in my opinion, right? Like, the live edge stuff was also popular back in the 70s, you know, with the big cypress round tables and a lot of that live edge stuff. And I'm not necessarily talking about like the cabin rusticy, you know, beds that have the log
mortise made from poles, essentially.
Yeah, basically. I'm not talking about that necessarily. I'm talking about, you know, actual tops that are live edge. And I think, in my opinion, there is a time and a place that it's well done, right? Or it can be well done if the execution is right. However, it can be very blatantly obvious that it's a fad piece if it's not done well. If that makes sense.
Right.
I think there's some good times where you can utilize live edge, and maybe not necessarily live edge. Maybe it is maybe it's a tabletop and you're not necessarily having the live edge on both sides, but you're book matching them and you keep the live edge in the center. So you kind of have that yin and yang look, but then you do square up the edges to where you have a traditional table shape. In that instance, I think it's well done and it looks great. But the same way with the river tables, how people are making the river tables. I think it's a fad that will come and go.
Sure.
I think it'll come back though. I don't know what you guys think. What I guess I wanted to know what your guys' opinions were on the live edge furniture, and if you think it'll stick around.
Yeah, I think we kind of went through the fad in the late '80s and early '90s where we had like the golden oak, and then we got into like more contemporary where it was like the cherry and the maple and everything was just like so uniform wood. I mean, it didn't even look like wood. It was like almost like a plastic because colors were so uniform. And now with the live edges kind of more into people are allowing the rustic look and wood to look more like wood, and they're keeping that. It's like that fad has kind of like gone back the other direction as far as, went from very uniform, plasticky looking wood to now wood being wood. And like you said, that it's like when you do it in the right way and in small quantities, it looks good, but you can way overdo it, and then all it turns into like a log home type look, like you said, with like the log beds and log furniture and stuff. So I think I do like the way it looks when it's done right and in proportion or whatever. And like you said, it's a fad. It'll pass by eventually, and we'll move on to something. We'll go back to the golden oak look of the '90s, and people will be restoring their houses to the glory of the late 1900s with their brass fixtures and golden oak, and I'm sure. So I'm just waiting for that day, waiting for it to come back around.
It's funny because that one thing you said, John, that is a good way to put it. I like it when the character of the wood is shown, but it's not rustic.
Right.
I guess that
the little sap wood comes into, that's part of the wood. It's like
little Crenovian type thing. Yeah. Like I like that. Which is funny coming from myself, I have been called a redneck before.
What?
I know you guys wouldn't believe it. I know. It's shocking. You would think I'd be into the rusticy stuff, but I'm not. I guess I feel that's the portion of this that tends to be overdone, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I guess the part that I would say is, going back to the pendulum swing of it, is because Nakashima was working at his zenith in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And then it essentially disappeared. But he was alone with it. It's not like he started a trend. I mean, you mentioned like the cypress tables, but those were more cookies, rather than like long boards with live edges. But then to John's point, we working for doing stuff with Woodsmith plans and searching through our back catalog of projects, there is definitely a section of rounded edged oak projects from the
golden oak era,
from the late 80s, early 90s that probably won't get turned into plans ever, just because or we have to wait like another 20 years for that to just kind of like circle back through, because right now that just has a very dated look to it. But I wonder if the resurgence of the live edge is a reaction to factory made toned and tinted finishes, so that every piece of wood looks like every other piece of wood, and like you said, like you're showing off the uniqueness of each board.
Yeah. And I guess it's that from that standpoint, sawing lumber and stuff, seeing how each board comes off differently, that is an aspect of it that I really enjoy. you
Sure.
know, because every tree is different. Like I'm sitting on my deck right now overlooking probably 80 walnut trees. Every one of them's different. You know, some of them are perfectly straight. Some of them have crooks in them. Everyone is growing completely different. Everyone will look different when it's cut, which is a feature that I like of wood. You know, I like that. I like that it's not uniform. I like that you have variation, and each board tells a story of the tree that it grew with. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I guess from that standpoint, I like it. And I like the Nakashima style, where a lot of the stuff he did was just very organic. You know, everything was kind of organic lines, really nature based, which I appreciate. So, and there's some people that do it well, but there's some. I sound like a broken record, but there's some people that just don't. So,
Are you gonna name names?
no, nope, I am not. So, yeah, I guess.
This track.
Yeah, yes.
Different people.
Yeah, no, I don't know, and it's one of those things that I appreciate that people think, you know, if I go out and saw a log from something. Side point, because I have a sawmill, do I get to call myself a sawyer now?
Yes.
Okay, so as a sawyer, I appreciate the fact that people are hiring me to come out and saw lumber for them, and they want to utilize this material that has been grown on their property or that they procured somehow, right? And I appreciate the fact that they want to build something out of it. You know, one couple that I went and sawed for a couple of weeks ago had some ash, right? And they wanted to make some benches outside. They know nothing about woodworking really. They do a lot of home renovation and home flipping. This is like the third or fourth home that they've been at. They have flipped, they've updated it, flipped it, and are reselling it. And they had an ash tree that was trimmed. It was just hanging too close to the house. So we sawed some of the limbs, which isn't the best wood in the world, but they just wanted to make some benches out of it.
Sure.
As a sawyer, I appreciate the fact, you know, as a woodworker, I appreciate the fact that they want to preserve that material and use it. And I will never discourage somebody from getting into a shop and using their hands to build something. I think that's something that just is lost on most people. So I will always encourage that. So I do appreciate it from that standpoint, you know?
Yeah.
And it is a good entryway for people, I guess. And that's, I guess, the flip side of the coin is generally live edge stuff is a little bit easier to make, right? And if it does lean towards the rustic-y, who cares? That might be that person's style.
Right.
And it's generally easier to build.
Well, and it's also, I think, a counterpoint to, you know, it stands as a nice contrast to a lot of furniture I think that a lot of people have, where furniture styles have been kind of IKEA-fied, where it's crisp lines and straight, you know, whatever. So if you put a live edge table in there, you know, coffee table or whatever, then you have this counterpoint to it that shows off a different look for the wood, that, you know, that you're, like John said, let the tree be the tree, or let it look like the tree that it came from, you know. So on an interesting point, I don't remember how I stumbled onto the guy's link, but it was, I don't know, he kind of claimed himself as the one who started the river table look, but he didn't do it with epoxy. He has the, you know, the live edges facing each other, but then gets glass cut to fit. And I kind of thought that the glass panel look appealed to me a lot more than, you know, 4 inches of light blue epoxy.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, if you guys have ever priced out that epoxy, it's expensive.
Oh yeah.
Like a couple gallons of it is several $100s. It's very expensive. But I think Phil, he was the same guy that was trying to like copyright the name River Table, right? If I remember
Could
right.
be. I don't know. Yeah.
He was trying to he had came up with this design using glass, and he was trying to copyright it. And I don't know whatever came of it. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, I don't think you necessarily copyright something that everybody is using in woodworking, but you know.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a coffee shop in town here that has a table in it, and I think it's epoxy filled, but they had it CNC'd or laser cut for Saylorville Lake.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Where it's like the overall shape. You got the Des Moines River flowing into it, and then they had the kind of like topographical
the contours
cut into it, so you get the idea of what the lake and the dam and whatever are. So I thought, to be able to change the concept of a table from being something that's more like, it's more important what gets set on it than the table itself. Kind of adds something to it. I thought that was kind of fun.
So I guess on the note of kind of this whole thing, what are you guys' feelings about Sap Wood in projects? So we work with a lot of material that is purchased from a lumber company in town, and a lot of the times the lumber is steamed, right? It's kiln dried and steamed to uniform it. So the walnut you get tends to be a very dull gray look, but they do that to bleach the sapwood out of it, or dye the sapwood, I guess, kind of uniform the color. And we have a couple of woods in Iowa that have a very stark difference in sapwood versus heartwood. Walnut is obviously one of them. Cherry can be that way.
Right.
We have some others.
Hickory.
I say hickory will be that way as well. So do you guys see sapwood as a defect? Or do you guys try to avoid it when you're building projects? Because at the magazine, we've always tried to avoid it if we can.
Right. Yeah, historically, we definitely have. I made a dining room table as a wedding gift for my wife out of cherry. It's in a shaker harvest table style, folding leaves. And when I was making it, it was more of I was trying to use every part of the pig in it, and there was sapwood in it. And I got some criticism afterwards that, wasn't expertly done because I'm showing sapwood and those are defects. And, cherry sometimes gets those black mineral deposits in there too. So there's some of those, no knots really, except maybe, one or two tight pin knots on there. But over 20 years, it's taken on a really cool look to it. And having sapwood in different places, to me, it is appealing, because it adds some variety to it, and I think can work well, especially if you're using it in conjunction with other sound woodworking techniques. Are you doing a good job of gluing up a panel so that it doesn't, you don't have wildly diverging grain patterns meeting at the joint line and stuff like that. And then I did for the TV show, we're doing a candle lantern, and that one I had a cherry board that again had some sapwood and mineral streaks in it, and having a couple of those accents in there adds color maybe, or a graphic look to it that you just don't get when it's just a plain straight up uniform board.
Sure.
John, what do you think?
I think you've hit all the high points there. Is like, it's acceptable if you're considerate of like the way you would with like the grain pattern of the wood and like how you glue up panels, and it's not all, mix match together. I think it looks good. It shows that, you're considering it when you were doing it, rather than just like taking all the boards and doing whatever you want with them. But I think, when done with that consideration, it looks good. And I don't mind using sapwood that manner. So,
I think there's a few projects that I have built, and most of the projects I build for myself are walnut, just because I have a lot of it.
Humble brag.
Well, no,
you're walnut rich.
I'm filthy walnut rich. But no, I have a lot of it, right? And kind of along the same points as you, Phil, you try to use every part of the pig, right? And there's a point where it's like, you know what? It's better, in my opinion, just to go ahead and use the Sap Wood if you have to. On my sleigh bed that's in the bedroom behind me, I have one of the rails on it has Sap Wood, and I was trying to avoid it, but I couldn't on this one board. So I cut it in a way where the Sap Wood is both equal on top and bottom. Right. So it's not like a straight sap along the top. It's split. So it looks intentional, I guess, is the point. It's the same way with the headboard. When I was gluing up the headboard, there's a glue line, and one section of board or one section of that headboard along the glue line had Sap Wood. And it's like, well, if I glue that up next to non-Sap Wood, you're going to see a hard line where that Sap Wood is glued along the next board. So instead, you book match it, and you get that book match Sap Wood, which sounds counterintuitive, but it blends it in much better. I mean, it sounds silly, but it does. It blends it in much better. It doesn't look like, oh, hey, there's a glue line with the Sap Wood butting right up against that glue line. Instead, it's a Sap Wood shape throughout the headboard. So, I guess, same thing. If it's done well, if it's done consciously, and it looks like you meant to do it, have at it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think at that point, the Sap Wood as a different color ends up being part of the grain pattern of it.
It does.
It's no different than using, flat sawn boards to their best advantage and having the cathedrals match or be book matched or something like that. You have the wood already has different colors in it to begin with.
Yep.
And you're just using those to the best advantage. I've read a few of Krenov's books, and one word that he uses repeatedly is sensitivity. That you're aware of what you're doing, and it's not just going strictly by the cutting diagram.
Yeah.
Where you're just lopping off lengths of pieces and putting them together. So,
which I will say that's a double-edged sword, because we talk about using every part of the pig, but then if you're trying to be conscious about how you cut stuff out of a board, you can end up with a lot of waste.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you're trying to get certain grain patterns, if you're trying to use one section of board that has arching grain and using that in like an arched rail or something, you can end up with more waste. However, there's sometimes where I think it's worth that effort and worth that expense.
Yeah.
And the waste.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's just one of those skills, in addition to cutting wood and creating strong, well-fitting joints, is being able to be mindful of what the color and tones and patterns of the wood are.
Yep. So, yeah. On a side note, anybody that's wondering, this is not a beer. This is a maple root beer. I told Phil about these the other day. I have drank so many of these. I don't drink soda usually, but these maple root beers, we get them at Menards here in the Midwest. Oh my God, they're like the best thing in the world. So I'm not drinking on the job.
You moved up from the tiny A&W root beer from last week.
That is true. To the maple,
maple.
The Wisconsin maple root beer.
Right. So a little shout out to Sprecker's root beer.
Oh man.
It's delightful. Being a Wisconsin boy, I used to live in Chicago and then would drive back up to my parents and would drive through the greater Milwaukee area where the Sprecker's brewery is. And it was always real distinctive, that kind of yeasty smell as you went right through. So
yeah, it's funny because on the box or the little carton of these, it said they have like 40 different types of soda flavors. Which I've seen them in Menards, and there's only been a handful I've been interested in. But when I saw maple, I love maple stuff. Maple lattes are one of my favorite things in the world. It's my winter treat to myself. Don't laugh at me, John. I'm a basic man. I just like my lattes.
You are a walking paradox of redneck sensitivity.
But when you said, because you said they have a honey cream,
Yeah,
what is it, a honey cream soda?
honey cream soda.
Couldn't find it at our Menards next to me, but I will be looking for it. So, in case anybody is going to call me out, because I know somebody will on drinking on camera, it's a root beer.
Dang it.
Mean. Yeah, dang it. So what have you been working on, Phil?
Well, I finally finished my compact router table, which stretched out unnecessarily long because of just waiting to get some hardware and finding piano hinge screws that are small enough but not too small. Because I had a handful of them here, and I went to put it, I started pre-drilling all the holes for it, went to drive it in, and the head just went right through the hole,
Well, it's funny because those piano hinge screws always seem to either be just too small like that, or they're too big and the stupid hinge won't close.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like the countersink and the hinge leaves are just never the right size, so. And I will say that I went a little overboard on the router fence, which I'll be posting about on our website, and I'll have a link for it on the show notes. But overall, I'm really happy with how it turned out. And about the only thing that I didn't like is when I was putting on this router table has the hinged wings that come out to support the tabletop extensions, is even though I tried to glue up the case as square as I possibly could, I had a little bit of racking or unsquareness in, so I had to like shim one of the piano hinges back plumb, and like the right side support wing just doesn't, it kind of squeaks a little bit when it closes down tight, and so I'm not
Just
one of those things that I'll totally
leave it set up.
Yeah, you just leave it set up, or a few years I won't care about it anymore. And
Yeah.
but it's just one of those things where it's like I was trying so hard.
Yeah. Well, and there's some of those projects you get in the middle of, and there's so many different little parts that play together.
Right.
That you try your best, but just one thing pushes everything out,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, but overall, I'm really happy with it. Like I said, the fence is a little bit, it's my homage to Pat Warner and has some micro adjust built into it. And
I like the color you chose for it too.
yeah, I did. I've been doing that on most of my shop projects recently, is having the general finishes, they're milk paint, but it's an acrylic in coastal blue. It's kind of a medium, not quite navy blue. So I have some drawer fronts and some carts that I've done painted in that, and provides a little bit of a cleaner look, I guess. I mean, not that I don't mind the bench, the Baltic birch plywood on it, but
Yeah.
it's going pretty well. Been doing some stuff in the shop with my kids. And then one of the things that I'm working on now is my Dragon Crew carving.
Nice.
Of the new SpaceX Dragon Crew module that goes with my Apollo one that I did last year.
Yep.
The Apollo capsule. So for those of you watching on the YouTubes, you get to see that. So that's kind of fun. And then now it's on to finishing a bunch of projects that I've kind of have kicking around in my shop, like the gentleman's dresser, which has turned into a impromptu workshop storage center. So
that's been there for a long time. It feels like 3 years ago we built that.
It wasn't 3 years ago.
2?
Yeah, probably 2. So I've got like some basement replacement windows in there and a tool bag and a bunch of other stuff. And
Nice.
part of it is I really like the project, but I'm not sure where it's going to go in the house right now. So we gotta work on that a little bit.
Just get rid of a kid.
Right.
The bedroom to decorate.
Yeah. So, and trying to come up with a good finish for it, because I didn't want to do the super dark oak that we did on the. Not that I don't like it. It just I wanted a lighter look to it.
Yeah. What I see something. I see a rebel symbol behind you. What is it?
You do. It's
Is that next week?
A little sketch from one of my kids.
Oh,
from
yeah,
the
nice.
Star Wars Rebels animated series. So,
All right.
yeah, I think it's important to, like, I don't know, there's this one element of setting up a workshop where it's the functionality of it, like having the workbench, the right tools, and that kind of stuff. And it ends up just becoming another office, so to speak, in your house. And it's just a work area. But because I don't do this for a living, I want it to be kind of a special place. So I have shop art scattered about in it. So that's one of them. Makes me enjoy the time that I have. So.
Yep. John, how's the fort coming?
Really good. So last weekend I got the roof on, did some shingling, and I have to give a shout out to all the people out there that do roofing as a career, because I had probably like 50 to 60 square feet of roof to shingle on this playhouse. And it was like, oh, I'll go out there for a little bit in the morning while I'm still in the shade. And then by 9 o'clock, it's like, oh, it's like 80 degrees out. It's too hot here on this little roof. And then so I'd go back in and come back out. And then when it was like 8 or 9 o'clock at night in the shade, and kind of just do a little here and there. So it's like, makes me really respect the people that are on like roofs,
doing real roofs,
doing real work. And like, because I couldn't even handle that. So, but got that all done, got the roof on. So now it's just got to get it painted sometime and a little trim work, and we'll be there. So I feel like it's going to be an all summer project. But it's all functional now. It's got a roof on. So that's good.
Which is probably the better part, is that at least it's functional. Yeah. Or is that a downside where it's like, the kids are playing on it, I really don't need to do any more?
Right. Exactly. That's what I've tried. I was like, we got the slide on now, guys. Can I stop? And they're like, no, you got to do more. You got to do this. You got to do that. So each little step kind of appeases them for a little while, and then I got to do more. So that's what I did last weekend. And this weekend, I just kind of been basking in the beach. Basically, not a sand beach, but beach wood, as in 200 board feet of 8-quarter beach that we're starting to work on an English workbench for the TV show here next week. So getting all that wood together, and so that's been enjoyable. So, about you, Logan?
So I have last night I spent the entire evening, basically from 6 o'clock until about 10:30, putting a roof in this camper. So first of all, I feel like I dropped the ball. My wife bought this camper, okay? My wife, I agreed with her to buy this camper.
You compromised with
her. I compromised, yeah. She wanted the camper, I didn't, so we compromised and bought the camper. And I had no way to get it home. So I feel like I missed the ball, or dropped the ball, because I owe a shout out to Jim. Jim's one of our subscribers, and listens to our podcast and TV show and stuff. And he's here in Des Moines. I'm friends with him on Facebook. And I sent out an SOS on my Facebook saying, hey, does anybody have a fifth wheel hitch that could pick this up for me and bring it to my house until I can trade my truck in? And Jim said, heck yeah, I'll get it for you. So Jim came out and got it and brought it to my house and dropped it here. And kind of as a trade, I went out and saw it at his place, cut some logs that he had last weekend. So that was fun. So huge shout out to Jim. His Facebook page is Bubba's Woodworks, so I'll throw a link to that in the show notes. But yeah, so we've kind of been redoing this camper. I say myself has been tearing this camper apart and redoing it per my wife's instructions. And I am like super thankful that when I was younger, I learned wiring with my dad. My dad's an electrician, so we used to wire houses for our friends that were contractors. Because I tore out all the electrical, just put new electrical in it. And last night I started putting up this roof, and we talked about plywood last week, right? And why all the hate. There's another product that I hate, but it's a decent product in the right application, and it's particle board flooring. So this stuff is like it's a tongue and groove flooring, right? It snaps together like so. Okay, so you guys that are watching can see it. So it's kind of like a shiplappy type flooring. I would never personally put a particle board flooring down just because I think it could soak up water if you spill water on it. And the top on it is like a vinyl coating. When you cut it, the vinyl like peels off and stuff. It's really weird. But we bought this stuff at Menards, and I did the entire ceiling in this like shiplap 1/2 inch thick flooring, which allowed me to buy a battery powered nailer like we have the Ryobi one we have on the show. I bought the 18 gauge one to put this stuff up, and it worked fantastic. But I was up till like probably 11 o'clock last night doing the ceiling in there, but it's done. I was super itchy, so much insulation all over, putting can lights in and stuff. So that was interesting. So now that the ceiling's done, I guess I have a couple walls to replace that had water damage at some point. So that'll be fun. We always joke about how Douglas fir it's kind of a nice wood. Vertical grain Douglas fir is a nice looking wood, but right. It has splinters of death.
Yeah, they're venomous.
And you know what's worse is Douglas fir plywood.
Oh. And
it's like twice as bad. So all these walls in this camper are like a super thin like fir plywood, and they shatter and stuff. So I'm gonna have to peel some of those out. I have like 3 areas to pull out that I think are like 4x4 or so, and replace with new nasty poisonous plywood that I bought. So that'll be the next project. But I actually went out and I had a log to saw this weekend, or last weekend. I think the biggest log to date that I've got on my mill. It was a ash log. It was about 12 foot long, about 32 inches in diameter, and I think based on my log calculator, it was like 4,000 pounds. I mean, the thing was massive. But I have a company, Crow Outdoor Services in Des Moines. They reach out to me, and I have some photos of this log on the trailer or on the sawmill, and I'll put those in the show notes. But Boyan over at Crow has been texting me when he gets these nice trees. So he's like, "Hey, we have a tree we're dropping in an hour. Can you get there?" I was like, "Yep, boys, get in the truck. We're going." So I throw the kids in the truck, hook the sawmill up, go over there, and we cut this ash. And I will say I'm getting a lot of ash right now because these ash. John, stop laughing. God, I knew you were going to.
I'm gonna stop with the butt joint jokes.
Yes,
stuff because I just found out my parents are listening to this, and they were last week. They were like, "Hey, what's up with the butt jokes?"
But anyways, we have a lot of ash trees that are getting taken down, obviously from the ash borer. So almost every tree that I'm getting a hold of right now tends to be ash, and they're big. This one was 32 inches in diameter. I couldn't cut it straight through, so I had to do straight edges on one side. But at some point, I think I'm gonna have to start cutting some of this ash into like bowl blanks. But my fear is, so right now I'm cutting everything 2 inches thick. But you get a 2-inch thick piece of ash that is 24, 26, 28 inches wide and 12 foot long. It's a couple 100 pounds. So if I cut them 4 inches long or 4 inches thick, how am I going to move that myself? Really? You know what I mean? Like that's going to be super heavy. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure out something to do with all this ash that I have. Maybe I'll reach out to the Des Moines wood turners and see if they want any ash bowl blanks or something. Because
you should. I would think they would be really interested in that.
Yeah. Because I can cut them easily on the mill. I just cut them 4 inches thick and then use a chainsaw to cut them into basically 24 by 24 bowl blanks. But so I'm looking forward to getting some stuff that's not ash. Hopefully soon. I have a bunch of red oak to cut. And I think we'll do that for a magazine article here in the next couple of weeks. So that'll be fun to get in the middle of.
Yeah. I think that'll be a fun series of articles to do about sawmilling. I mean, even if you're even if you're not interested in buying a mill yourself, I think there's definitely value in finding wood, and unusual places for it, or really special boards or sizes that you're looking for specifically. And
yeah. Or I mean, even if, as woodworkers, we're all wood hoarders. Like, I don't know what it is about a woodworker that makes us. Maybe there's something in sawdust that makes us all have this weird affinity to hold on to everything. So when somebody sees a tree taken down, I think even if you don't have a sawmill, you're thinking, oh, look at all that lumber that's getting thrown away.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the people across the street just this morning, they're having a huge elm taken down. And I was like, oh, I should go over there and tell them to leave the trunk. But I don't, it's like 40 inches. It's like, I can't do anything with it. And it's just, it hurts my feelings that that tree's going to go to the dump. So yeah, I'm hoping people will find this, these sawmilling articles and videos and stuff interesting. Maybe they're looking for a mill, maybe they're not. Maybe they're interested in hiring a mill. I think it'll be good. It'll be some good content.
Yeah. All right. So here's in lieu of a listener question today, I'm going to pose one of my own.
Okay.
And I was kind of hoping John would be there, but his phone died, so he's off the air.
He's frozen at us.
Right. So my question goes back to the dining table that I have.
Okay.
So with the leaves up, the table is 3 feet by 6 feet. Okay. Made out of solid cherry. Served our family pretty well. However, there's technically two fatal flaws in this table design. Okay. In that the leaves fold on a rule joint. And I thought when I was building this as a relatively new woodworker, 20 years ago now, was A, it would be fun to do a rule joint. B, you'd be able to take this, take the table and fold the two leaves down, and now you have this relatively narrow thing so that it doesn't take up a lot of space, blah, blah, blah. Yep. So the truth is we almost never fold the leaves down. And when you have kids and you're eating pretty much all the meals at this table, things are going to get spilled. And those liquids seek the rule joint, spill down, and turns into a cleanup nightmare. So clearly the Shakers, being a celibate sect, didn't think about children when they were designing this table. So my question is, and even though our kids are past the constantly spilling stuff stage, it still happens.
Oh, for sure.
Do I, and here's what I'm considering, taking the top off, pulling the hinges off, and basically sawing out the rule joint, gluing it back together into a single wide top. I'm only going to end up losing an inch-ish.
Sure, yeah.
Probably
not much. Yep.
Half inch each side, because, one side of the rule joint is a round over, and I just really have to go right along that shoulder or the fillet on there.
Yep.
Glue it back together, and now I have, essentially still a 3x6 table, but now I don't have those seams in there. Is that a legit?
I think that's completely legit. I don't, especially because you guys have a house now. I'm assuming you guys had a smaller house probably when you built it, right? Or an apartment.
That was an apartment, yeah.
Yeah. So you guys don't have, in my opinion, probably don't have, and I might be wrong, but you probably don't have any reason to ever drop the leaves. I mean,
right.
You guys are eating at it daily for the most part. So yeah, I would absolutely. Or, I mean,
but do I then, because this is one of those decisions that creates another decision. So I do that now. Do I then make the table base wider so that the overhang is more or less the same? I can keep the long rails, even though they still have the spinners on it for to support the leaves. But do I take the end rails and lengthen them so now or do I just leave it?
If it was me, I would probably leave it.
Yeah.
And
That's
just
kind
take
of
the
what I'm
roll
leaning
joints out.
towards. Yeah.
Or I guess another option would be if for some reason your wife has a sentimental attachment to that top, maybe just make a new top and you shove that top in storage.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I guess at some
I don't
point
have
you may want a smaller table again.
Yeah. I'm kind of leaning towards just gluing it up and leaving it on there. Although the question will be like, why didn't I do this years ago but
yeah. But no, I think that's completely legitimate. I don't see any reason why you couldn't. I did the same thing with what did I build? Oh, it was the loft bed. Remember that loft bed I spent like weeks building and now my son doesn't use anymore?
Oh, nice.
Well, it's because our youngest could figure out how to climb the ladder, and that was not a good situation to have.
Right.
But it's like I built it for a certain size mattress, and then my wife decided that we were going to buy a new mattress like the next week. So it's like I'm in the shop, or I'm in the bedroom with a circular saw shortening some rails. It's like sometimes you just got to modify it on the fly.
Yep.
So in this case, I guess 20 years later on the fly, but
yeah. So anyway,
you should throw a photo in the show notes page of the table.
Yeah.
So we can get some opinions on it. But yeah, I don't see any reason why you couldn't just cut the roll joint out, glue it together.
Yeah.
And call it good, you know?
It's kind of what I'm leaning towards. I can still, the tabletop is held on with brackets that I can unscrew, if we move, so you can still get the table itself moved around easily. So,
yep.
All right. So anybody listening wants to weigh in on that, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at woodsmith.com for an email, or find us on Facebook or Instagram and leave your comments there. Also be aware that we have a show notes page for each of the episodes where we're going to put some links and photos of the things that we've been talking about. Feel free to subscribe if you're not already to the Shop Notes podcast, wherever you get your other podcasts, or take a look at our YouTube channel where we post not only other woodworking videos, but every episode goes on there as well. So if you want to see a bunch of talking heads with earphones, nodding and laughing and having a good time, you can check us out there. Otherwise, we'll see you next week on the next episode of the Shop Notes podcast. Bye, everybody.
This episode of Shop Notes Podcast is brought to you by Woodsmith Magazine. Woodsmith Magazine has been a trusted source for all your woodworking information for over 40 years. From tips and techniques to furniture projects to shop projects. You can find it all in Woodsmith Magazine. Subscribe today at woodsmith.com.
But John just looks like he has a smart aleck remark to say. Or he's frozen. His phone died.
No, it's there. He's all right. Well, maybe he is frozen. He's just trying to hold really still.
Yes. Oh, awesome.